This is not the full film Redline. Rather, this is a review for the English dub of Redline. The film can be purchased on Blu-ray and DVD from Manga Entertainment or wherever home video releases are sold. Please support the official release. Sincerely, the Dub Talk Podcast. Hello, everybody, and welcome to tonight's edition of Dub Talk Racing. Now, before things get started, let's go over the rules of the race. Number 1. The podcast you are about to listen to may contain strong language and content. Viewer discretion is advised. Second, the episode of this podcast may contain spoilers for the entirety of the film Redline, as well as potential spoilers for any other anime. So please be aware if you haven't finished them. And lastly, the views and opinions expressed here are those of the individual participants, and do not reflect those of the Dub Talk Podcast as a whole. Alright folks, and with that, the races are off. We've got Jet Dastardly speeding up past Roots Perfect and Queen Era Pit Stop. Will this finally be the year he takes the race?
The race is mine. But first, let's get rid of all those pesky racers so they don't get in the way. Classy! Fire the missiles! What are you doing, you fool? You just set the car on fire!
Oh, well, folks, it looks like we might be having some technical difficulties. So while we go pick up Jet Dastardly's ashes from the road, please enjoy the following podcast. Hello, and welcome to Dub Talk, where a group of friends come together to talk about English dubs, both old and new. My name's Jet, and I'm joined tonight by my buddy Lack the Watcher.
Hello.
And we're here to kick off Dub Talk's annual Summer at the Movies, where we discuss English dubs for anime films. Of course, you can't really start off summer movies without a good popcorn blockbuster, so we're here to talk about Redline. Well, if you haven't seen Redline, and I mean, like, really, who hasn't seen Redline at this point? It's been around for basically forever at this point.
Well, here's a shocker. I've only seen Redline because we had to do this episode now.
Oh, okay, well, don't feel too bad. Like, I have seen Redline, but I didn't finish it until we had to do it for this episode.
Yeah, well, I know there's going to be people who are listening to this and are like, really? And I'm like, yeah.
Okay, so if you don't know what Redline's about, just taking the synopsis from A&N, every 5 years a race called Redline is held at a surprise location, shortly revealed before the race begins. This time it's being held on Robo World, much to the dismay of Robo World's militant government, which has no intention of allowing the race to proceed. The race has no rules. Whoever crosses the red line first wins. Sweet JP is a rare breed of racer who prefers retro style and raw power over high-tech gadgets and weaponry. Troubled by their involvement with the mob, Sweet JP and his team just want a clean shot at winning the race. Sanashi McLaurin is a skilled and highly competitive rising star in the ranking circuit. She beat JP in the last qualifier at Kanazai. Up against lethal hostility from Robo World's government and their fellow racers, JP and Sanashi are put to their limits in the race for Redline. But basically you don't really need to care about any of that. It's just like racing happens. Like, this is not a movie you really come to for the plot.
Yeah. TLDR, it's the most expensive Speed Racer fanfic ever made.
I was thinking more along the lines of Wacky Racers, but Speed Racer was also a very good fit.
Yes. I wouldn't be surprised if Koike was inspired by Speed Racer for this. Or Mach Go Go Go.
Yeah, that would make sense, totally. Yeah, but of course, as with basically any dub, you can't have a dub without, some ADR stuff, so we're gonna start with our director and our scriptwriter, who fortunately happen to be one and the same for this film. And they are in the form of one Alex Von David, a little indie director who's done some stuff you've probably, I don't think it's stuff anyone's heard of, Sword Art Online, something called Durara, Toradora, small stuff. Do you have any thoughts, Lack?
regarding the dub, I would say I appreciate how, in spite of how it's like insane might be a little over the top, but how flamboyant and like extra, I guess, this movie was, that Alex Von David really tried to get very sincere, very grounded performances out of his actors. I really appreciate that a lot about it. I think everyone was cast very well, and I think the best part about the cast was the fact that, you know, in spite of the fact that how just like a visual feast this film is, the performances reflected a humanity to the characters that helped a lot. It helped a lot in grounding the film, because if you had just had these actors just being as crazy and just like you know, as the movie is, it would be exhausting. You know, and you've got these little moments where you feel like you're actually watching people. Even the more absurd, like dog-looking people or troll-looking people, you get these sincere performances and these real-sounding people, and it really helps to keep this film that would be like just like over-sensitizing in any other way, but it manages to keep it just under obnoxious.
Oh, okay. That's definitely not quite the thing I had, but I can definitely understand that. I did think there were like a few really good quiet moments in the movie, but like, I was mostly just personally kind of here for like the sheer adrenaline. Like, this is basically just the kind of movie that sort of like bleeds cool and has a general aesthetic that's kind of really easy sell to Westerners, so it really needed a dub that could kind of capitalize on those elements and make something that sounds both natural and English and is like just really pumped up and over the top. And fortunately, Alex Von David is the guy who gave us the Kill la Kill dub, so it goes without saying that he's pretty well versed in adrenaline. And even though this dub does simply predate that one by like a couple of years, it's pretty easy to see how you expect for this. The overall direction of this dub, it's kind of bursting the brim of energy, and I'd say basically everyone here is really bringing their A game for this dub, and it sounds like they're having a lot of fun with this, which it helps make the movie feel a lot of fun to listen to.
Yeah, don't get me wrong, this movie's dumb, but I just appreciate the fact that the actors didn't just try to out extra this already extra film.
Yeah. If they went too over the top of it, it would break the illusion. So
yeah, it would just make the film like there's nothing really to grasp onto here.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. Going on to the script real fast, it does kind of help that the script is sort of bursting with the same level of energy, and as is kind of expected with a lot of the stuff he does, Alex Von David isn't afraid to get a little crude when helping to sell the material. Which means, you know, we get plenty of swearing, which you would kind of expect with this kind of film, you know, the occasional F-bomb, and a lot of really good one-liners. Now, one of my favorites being a little bit in the beginning where, like, they have a little, like, weird animation change where you see, like, a family just sitting around watching one of the races, and the mom just literally says something again, dude, violence is the only thing that makes me hot anymore. So yeah,
there was a lot of like one-liners in this dub that you can really appreciate.
Yeah, so that more or less tells you like what level of silliness this film is operating on. So, so it's pretty good stuff. I mean, I'm sure I could find something to nitpick if I tried hard enough. But for what this movie is going for, this was pretty much the perfect dub for it. And
there's no way to keep up with this movie enough to be able to nitpick it, honestly. So.
Yeah, like yeah. I mean, like, again, this is the sort of thing where it's like, you could scrutinize the thing if you really try, but there's kind of not much point to doing that.
God, can you imagine, like, being on cocaine watching this film? You'd lose your mind.
Definitely. And with that, I guess we're good to move on to characters, because there are actually a lot of them, surprisingly.
Oh my god, there's so much plot to this film. Honestly, like, you know, you saying that, it just made me think, my god, there's so much going on in this movie.
Sometimes a little too much, but yeah. So for our first group of characters, we have some of our racers. We have Gory Rider, Todoroki, presumably no relation to Best Boy Natsuko from My Hero Academia. You may fire all your arrows at me, Andrew. And his partner Miki. Todoroki and Miki are a pair of Japanese racers who got into Red Line thanks to a popularity vote, while Gory Rider is a dirty top who made his way to the racing scene because, well, why the heck not? So for playing Gory Rider, we have one George C. Cole, who you might know for such roles as Wamu in JoJo's Bizarre Adventure, Dr. Isaac Gilmore in 009 Re-Cyborg, and McMurdo Morrison in Mobile Suit Gundam Iron Blooded Orphans. Todoroki is played by Koto Garcia, who's mostly done bit roles, with his only other named role being Kenta Hagiwara from Figure 17. And lastly, Miki is played by Sam Riegel, who you might know for such roles as Shiro Emiya from the 2016 version of Fate Night, Mephisto Feelings from Blue Exorcist, and Phoenix Wright for the newer Ace Attorney games. So, did you have any thoughts on these three?
Well, my thoughts on the movie itself, I just realized how this entire cast sounds like characters from My Hero Academia.
Oh god,
If,
they totally do.
if you really look at the names, like they all sound like characters from My Hero Academia.
Oh man, they totally do.
Gory Rider, I mean, like, okay, well, we're starting off with three characters who aren't really in the film all that much, honestly. But for Paul St. Peter, I've always loved his voice. I always think he has a really cool voice, and I do remember him. I like for the few scenes that he was in, I thought he was very memorable. Like when he's trying to dissuade the paparazzi that he's like banging his co-pilot or something.
He was totally banging her.
Yeah. Todoroki and Miki were a little less so memorable, honestly, but that's because we're about to talk about two other characters who are a little more memorable. But I like Sam Riegel. No offense to Cutter Garcia, I don't really know him, but clearly he hasn't done that much. So, but yeah, they attacked the base, right? They tried to infiltrate the base.
No, that would be part of the next pair we're getting to.
Okay, sorry about that.
Don't feel too bad again. There are a lot of characters that it is hard to keep up with.
Yeah. I did see this like a week ago. So, yeah, Gory Rider's really the only one who stood out for me, but I don't think that's really the fault of Cutter Garcia and Sam Riegel. I think it's more just they had characters that really weren't that memorable and didn't do that much in the film. So, yeah, that's kind of my simple thoughts on these pretty simple characters, honestly.
My thoughts are more or less the same. I'd say George was the one who stood out to me the most, just because that was a more memorable character design. And just I guess the whole concept of a corrupt cop being in a high-speed race for some reason is just kind of a funny concept in and of itself. And he didn't get a whole ton to do, but for the few scenes he was in, he was pretty fun. And again, he was totally spazzing an assistant. You know he was. As for Todoroki and Miki, I didn't really have too many thoughts on Koto Garcia either. He didn't really stand out to me too much, but there also wasn't anything in his performance that I could really complain about, so I guess that kind of balances out. Sam Riegel as Miki was a little more memorable for me, just because for pretty much every scene he was in, he was swearing a lot, which I thought was kind of funny.
You know what's interesting? The other character Sam Riegel played stood out to me more. The when he plays the restaurant owner.
Yeah, that was him.
Yeah, he double played in this one, and that character actually stood out to me more because I think that scene was more memorable. So I don't know.
Yeah.
So.
Okay. Alright, I guess there really isn't too much to parse with these characters, so I guess we'll just move on to the next ones. For our next group of racers, we have Boy and Boss. God, I'm never going to be able to pronounce those names correctly. as well as Lynchman and Johnny Boya. So Boy Boy and Buzz Buzz are a pair of pop idols, also known as the Super Boys, while Lynchman and Johnny Boya are a pair of intergalactic bounty hunters, who who for some reason this really reminded me quite a bit of Muttley, Muttley and Dick Dastardly from Wacky Races. I don't know why. It was just something about the dynamic.
I can see that. I can see that.
Yeah. So anyway, playing Boy Boy, we have Lauren Landa. For Buzz Buzz, we have Laura Post. For Lynchman, we have John White, and for Johnny Boya, we have David Roche. Lauren Landa has played such characters as Nora from Noragami, Kyoko Sakura from Puella Magi Madoka Magica, and Annie Leonhard from Attack on Titan. Laura Post, you'll know for such characters as Deanna Cavendish from Little Witch Academia, Kari Kawamoto from March Comes In Like a Lion, and good old best mom Rago Kirwin from Kill la Kill, who did basically everything wrong. John White, you'll know mostly for his roles using another name, but you've heard him play such characters as Ryotaro Dojima from Persona 4 the animation, Cyborg 007 from 009 Re-Cyborg, and Silat from Berserk, the Golden Age movie tree. Lastly, David Roach is also largely known for his roles using another name, so much so that this is the only credit he has under this name.
Yeah, that's weird.
Yeah, because we at Dub Talk are professionals, I'm not going to say exactly who this person is, but he may or may not sound extremely similar to the world's prettiest serial killer from Monster, and that one really flamboyant murder clown Atunami. So yeah, he's that guy, maybe.
And best boy in JoJo.
Yes. Which best boy? It's up to you. You know which one.
Yeah.
So did you have any thoughts on these four?
Boy Boy and Boss Boss stood out to me the most, and I think one of the things I liked about their dynamic is that Alex Von David seemed to clearly pick two voice actresses who sound distinctive from one another. And he didn't need to do that necessarily, and he did, and I think that was a good idea, because you could easily just have one actress play both these roles, and it just wouldn't, it wouldn't really change that much. But the fact that he chose Laura Post, who's known for her more deep, voices, and Lauren Landa, she does have a deep voice too, but she also often uses a higher pitched voice. And the fact that they're so distinctive in, their tones in this, I think really helped a lot. Lynchman and Johnny Boya, not so much stood out to me, to be honest. I do remember hearing David Roach. I didn't know we didn't like to talk about their real names, but whatever. But I do remember hearing David Roach in the role of Johnny Boya. They were the ones who invaded the
it was those two.
station. Okay. All right, cool. Yeah, they had a little fun back and forth in that scene. That was kind of really their only big scene, though, from what I remember, right?
Yeah, that was pretty much more or less it.
Yeah. They actually had a little more screen time than Boy Boy and Boss Boss, honestly. But, yeah, no, everybody sounded fine here. John White and David Roach, I think, are two fantastic actors. I think they fit these roles well. Granted, it wasn't a huge role for either of them, but I think they did their job fine. And like I said with Boy Boy and Boss Boss, they both were... I like the fact that they sounded so different, and it helped to distinguish the characters a little more. So...
Cool. As for me, as someone who's pretty familiar with Lauren Landa and very familiar with Laura Post, I gotta say that, personally, these are some of the last characters I'd expect those two to play. I mean, granted, both have a pretty solid vocal range and they can do, bubbly characters pretty well, but, it's so hard to associate with them with, in the movie's own words, this is somehow the movie's own words. Girls who look like cosplayers from a porno. Anyway, these ladies...
Yeah.
I mean, it's not wrong, but...
Yeah. I mean, they served as a good counterbalance against Sonoshi, kind of, because you've got the Sonoshi who kind of just keeps to herself, is very introverted. She doesn't really like to talk to people so much. And then you've got Boy Boy and Bosmos, who are two girls who just love to show themselves off. So, you know.
Yeah. Anyway, these ladies basically had one job to do here, and it was to, you know, sound bubbly and basically dripping with as much sex appeal as humanly possible, and I thought they more or less nailed it, and I had no trouble buying these two as pop stars. I mean, I don't have like a whole ton to say on this, since this isn't the kind of film you come to for the characters necessarily, and these two didn't really do a whole ton, but I appreciate that, like you said, Lauren and Laura sounded pretty distinct from each other, and you could definitely tell who was who, with Laura definitely having a much more high-pitched and energetic voice, while Laura sounded a little deeper and slightly more grounded, which, you know, kind of makes sense for what roles he's generally known for. And I thought that made for a pretty nice contrast. Moving on to John White and David Roach as Lynchman and Johnny. Well, these two didn't really have like a whole ton to do either, and everyone here, they felt the most like they belonged in an episode of Wacky Races, like I said before. And in hopes that John gave Lynchman a very distinct kind of Saturday morning cartoon villain sort of voice, that really just kind of made me wonder how this guy operates in law enforcement as a bounty hunter. But again, I guess this isn't the kind of film you really speculate on that too much. You just kind of roll with it. And likewise, I thought David did a pretty good job of playing like the dumb sidekick. And while his voice wasn't like quite as distinct as John's, I thought it still carried enough energy to just kind of match the overall tone of the dub. And I thought what really made the performance kind of work was seeing how much those two bounced off each other during that one scene where they were, you know, hijacking a space station to take off the space Nazis and, you know, clear things for the big race. And the way they interacted during that whole little bit of sabotage probably, it helped paint a pretty good idea how they probably normally interact with each other. And I guess Lynchman is just kind of the brains of the outfit, I guess, and Johnny's just sort of like the dumb sidekick. I mean, I wish these two maybe could have had a little bit more to do, but for what we got, I thought they were pretty fun.
Yeah.
And I guess with that, we can move on to the next group of characters who are a little more important to the film, slightly.
Yeah.
So for our next group of characters, we have Trava and Shinkai, who both actually originated from a film called Trava First Planet, which was actually kind of the pilot for Red Lines, in a sense. That one I'm pretty sure I've seen, but it was like forever ago, and I don't really remember too much details from that film, but Trava was the main character in that, so I guess that's kind of a fun little fact. And we also have Little Dantana, a soldier from Robo World with a grudge against these two, who just kind of goes AWOL halfway through the film and joins the race for some reason. And lastly, we have Machine Head Tetsugen, the current champion of Redline. So playing Trava, we have Joey Morris. For Shinkai, we have Tony Oliver. For Little Dantana, we have Derek Stephen Prince. And for Tetsugen, we have one Michael McConaughey. Joey Morris doesn't really have any other notable anime credits, with his only other named role being Leo from the First Squad, the Moment of Truth OVA. But Tony Oliver, on the other hand, has been in a lot of stuff, and he's played such characters as Hibiki Tokai from Vandred, Lancer from Fate Stay Night Unlimited Blade Works, and Bat from the Fist of the North Star movie. Derek Stephen Prince, you will know for his roles in basically every dang iteration of Digimon. But specifically, he's played such characters as Hitmon from Digimon Tamers, Ryu Ishida from Bleach, and Phantom from Mare, March and Awakens Romance. Lastly, Michael McConaughey has played such characters as Jurgens from Eureka 7, Big Daddy from Gungrave, and Bartol Leones from the Seven Deadly Sins. So, any thoughts on these characters?
Yeah. Most of these characters' big scene was the restaurant scene, from what I remember. Correct?
Yeah. I mean, I think Derek Stephen Prince's character had like a little more to do throughout the film, but for the first two, it was mostly just like that bar scene.
Yeah, and Tetsugen, who's kind of the main antagonist, sort of.
I mean, it's like
Not really, but
it's either him or the space Nazis, but the film's kind of inconsistent with that. So
yeah, it just kind of just kind of says, we don't care anymore. Yeah, they all were pretty fun. I don't remember Trava that well, to be honest.
I don't feel too bad. I don't really either.
Yeah, I was like, Trava? Who's Trava? Shinkai, I do kind of remember when he kind of comes up and talks to, JP and Sonoshi. Yeah, and Tony Oliver's always a strong performance, and he's got such a unique voice that it kind of fits right in to this kind of really craziness. Little Dizuna, not so much with him. He doesn't really do that much. He if I'm not mistaken, he's kind of a lackey for Tetsujin, or am I wrong about that?
No, like I said, he was originally with Robo World, and then he just kind of goes AWOL halfway through the movie for some reason.
Okay, that's right. Yeah, no, I'm starting to remember this. See, only JP and Sonoshi's story kind of stuck with me, honestly, and they're the main characters, so I guess it's a good thing. But yeah. They were all good. I love hearing Michael McConaughey whenever I can, especially when he gets to play big bombastic villains. I think that's one of the reasons I love the Code Geass dub so much. But yeah, they all were really good. I honestly remember them kind of less than Boy Boy and Boss Boss and Lynchman and John Boya. But yeah, I think Tetsuzin. Okay, Tetsuzin. I think he kind of really came into his own near the end of the race at the end of the movie, when they just kind of go over the top and this isn't even my final form kind of thing.
Oh yeah, that whole climax was nuts.
Yeah, that's probably what bankrupted Madhouse, honestly.
Yeah, I could definitely see that.
Yeah. The producers at Madhouse were just like, we're gonna lose so much money for this one damn scene. All of them are having mental breakdowns, just crying in the bathrooms. You know what? Maybe I should be making jokes like that. I just realized how bad the industry is right now. I just realized making jokes like that probably isn't in the best.
Yeah, probably.
I apologize. Yeah, no, they were all fine, and I liked Tetsuzin. I thought he was a lot of fun near the end of the movie. But honestly, I don't really have that much to say about them. So,
Yeah. Thankfully, I do have a little bit more to say about these characters. Not so much Trava and Shinkai. For Trava, I haven't really heard of Joey Morse before this episode, which I guess makes sense since his only other anime credit is from a decade ago, so I can't really say he left too much of an impression on me, and it didn't help that Trava was kind of in the background, but I thought he sounded pretty fine. Tony Oliver Shinkai was a little bit more memorable because, like you said, Tony Oliver has a pretty distinct voice, and it's always kind of fun seeing him in really goofy roles, so I enjoyed the sort of middle-aged dork kind of voice he gave to Shinkai that made him sound like a little bit of a goofball. And I kind of enjoyed that whole bit where he was talking with Satoshi, where he was giving the whole exposition dump. And then in the end he just kind of tried to hit on her for some reason, and and that whole bit was pretty funny. Especially just how fast the shift was between going from goofball to sleazebag. Unfortunately, even though Trava and Shinkai are partners, I can't really say that those two got a whole lot of room to play off of each other. But I guess they did what they needed to, and I kind of liked how they bounced off of Derek Stephen Prince's Little Dejana. Michael McConaughey as Sessizin was pretty fun, and out of all the loud characters in this film, this guy was clearly the hammiest, so I'm very glad they got the voice of Charles Z. Britannia to handle this. And Michael definitely brings the exact level of quality ham that he needs to for this. And he pretty much chews the scenery every time he speaks, so I very much appreciated that. And also, while we haven't gotten too much into the technical aspects of the dub, I gotta say I really liked the mixing they did on his voice. Like, the Metal Robot sound was so distinct that if I wasn't, like, really familiar with Michael's voice, I actually might not have been able to tell it was him. They actually disguised it pretty well.
Yeah, I forgot the kind of filter that they put on his voice. That was actually pretty cool. So.
Oh, yeah, it was really cool. I gotta say, I felt a little sorry for him during that whole film's climax because, like, all that screaming during the final run to the finish line must have been, like, a really big strain on his vocal cords, but I definitely appreciate the extra mile he went with that.
Yeah, if anybody can handle it, he can.
Yeah, I guess so. Personally, though, the one I'm really here to talk about in this section is actually Derek Stephen Prince's Little Dejana, because for me, this was probably the most fun character in the entire film. Like, this guy goes from being a space Nazi to a state rebel in a span of, like, 5 minutes, just because he wants to beat Trava in a race for, like, some reason. Like, apparently they have some kind of grudge, but they never go into, like, too much detail on that, because I guess the film didn't really care enough. But anyway, Derek brings, like, the exact level of goofiness to his performance that that kind of implies. And, since, at this point, the man's voiced, like, over a dozen Digimon characters, it kind of goes without saying that he's pretty good at doing, like, really wacky character voices. And I appreciate that he goes full into giving this guy, like, the most over-the-top, whiny voice imaginable. And it sounds like he's just simultaneously crying and screaming literally every time he speaks, which was really funny to me. And, like, I have no idea how Derek managed to pull that off without destroying his vocal cords, but God bless him, because you can tell that he was having a lot of fun with this. And, even for I guess, a former space Nazi, this character is, like, so impossible to take seriously that it's kind of hard to not have fun with it. I do kind of wish we learned what happened to him after the race, because they don't really show what happens after the race for some reason. And I kind of imagine his bosses weren't very happy with him going AWOL, but, I'd personally just like to believe he just kind of rode off into the sunset somewhere and he's, like, chasing down police sirens or something. And, speaking of his bosses, I guess we should talk about them. We have in our next group, we have, I guess, the closest things this film has to antagonists. Because who in this film can he really take seriously, honestly? We have 3 of the leaders from Robo World, aka Space Nazis, because again, why the heck not? Specifically, we have the Secretary of Defense Titan, whose role is pretty much right there in the title. We have Robo World's President, who is also more or less what the title implies. And we have Colonel Volton, a military leader who's very determined to keep his men in line and, get the Red Line Racers off his dang planet at pretty much all costs. So, playing Titan, we have Doug Erholtz. For Robo World's President, we have one David Lodge. And for Colonel Volton, we have Taylor Henry. Doug Erholtz has handled such characters as TK from Digimon Adventure 02, Kenneth Archibald L. Malloy from Fate Zero, and Asuma Saratobi from the Naruto franchise. David Lodge, you'll know for such characters as the first voice of Kenpachi Zaraki from Bleach, Jiraiya from the Naruto franchise, and Lord Nene from Blue Dragon. Lastly, Taylor Henry is yet another actor who you'll primarily know by another name, but has done such roles as Skull Knight from Berserk 2016, Metal Knight from One Punch Man, and Gyuki from Neuro Rise of the Yokai Clan. So, did you have any thoughts on these 3 fine individuals who did nothing wrong technically?
Yeah, I mean, like, I know, they were just invaded, they were just defending their home, right? I mean, like, it's almost unfair to call them Nazis, they were just doing what
I mean, it doesn't help that I don't know, it doesn't help that, like, their symbol just literally looks like a swastika.
I know, yeah. But they really did, literally, Robo World President did nothing wrong. Hashtag Robo World President did nothing wrong. Well, I mean, aside from summoning that giant baby energy thing, like whatever that thing was.
Yeah.
It had like a weird name, but I can't remember what it was.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure I'll remember it if I think about it for 10 seconds, but I don't remember either.
Yeah. these are all really strong performances. Actually, I really enjoyed all of them. It's always fun to hear Doug Airholtz kind of do his slimy, almost flamboyant voice, which is always a delight to hear, especially when it's counterbalanced. It's funny how Doug Airholtz can go from like the really like most flowy kind of like I guess camp voice to like a totally serious like gritty like gruntled voice. I really like that about him. And the Secretary of Defense Titan, it was kind of nice. He was a lot of fun. I just liked how he retained a cool head through everything. It was really funny. And then you've got on the opposite spectrum Colonel Volton, who's played by the awesome Taylor Henry. Colonel Volton was just a delight, and the fact that he was just so over the top and so like just like pumped to do whatever he had to do was just so much fun. And then you've got the RoboWorld president, played by David Lodge, who was also fun. And David Lodge gave such a commanding performance. Like really, I think when you have a character like that, you need someone who can command a room, and I think David Lodge did that fantastically. I'm trying to think of really something that's... I want to find out what the name of that creature was.
It's funny. I actually did literally remember it right as you started talking. It was called Funky Boy.
Funky Boy? What?
Yes, it was literally called Funky Boy.
Funky Boy. That's it. Yes. Okay. Yes, and David Lodge got to say a line that was something to the akin of, we must now bomb Funky Boy, or something like that. And I was just like, that is a line that has been said in this film.
No, I think it was like literally along the lines of, we have to bomb him, we don't want him to suffer too much.
That's right, yeah, okay, yeah, we don't want Funky Boy to suffer too much, or something like that. And it was just... I was just like, well, that's a line that's been said in this film, and that kind of sums up the whole movie right there. Yeah, they were all great. They were all so much fun to listen to. I actually, every time they were on screen, I was actually happy. I was like, oh, good, it's more of these guys. So, yeah.
Yeah, I also had a lot of fun with these guys. Starting with Doug Airholtz as the secretary, since he sort of had the least to do of these three, I really enjoyed him. Like you were saying, Doug has a really good, snooty villain voice. And he generally does that kind of character pretty well. And while this one didn't really have too much to do, aside from giving us a case of exposition and, telling his boss how much everything's gone wrong, you can still tell Doug was having a lot of fun with it, and the smug sense of confidence in his voice, even as things continue to spiral downhill for these guys, definitely made him a lot more entertaining than he otherwise might have been, so I really appreciated that. As for David Lodge as the president here, he was a lot of fun to listen to. And it's really nice to talk about David Lodge, since he's kind of more or less left the anime scene these days. Well, the president here definitely wants to rain down death and destruction on all these races invading his planet, which is admittedly pretty understandable to get pissed about, since, these guys are technically invading his home world. So David's voice, combined with the great mixing to, help make his tone sound more robotic, really helps to sell this guy as a kind of obvious villain who wouldn't hesitate to mow down everyone in his way. But unfortunately for this guy, he's pretty much in the wrong movie, so instead, basically everything goes wrong for him. And much like with Derek Stephen Prince as the runaway space Nazi, David plays this guy so over the top that it's virtually impossible to take him seriously, and that actually helps him make the performance sound all the more effective and hilarious. And David's delivery and how this guy reacted to just everything going increasingly wrong for him, and, having basically all his country's secrets exposed in the end, I almost felt really sorry for the guy in the end. Okay, so the big standout here, though, was definitely Taylor Henry as Colonel Volton, because, who doesn't love Taylor Henry? The man has a very big, booming voice, and he uses it to fill this space Nazi with as much swagger as possible, because Volton here very clearly thinks he's hot stuff, and he even has a horn that looks like a pompadour, like, I seriously thought it was a pompadour for, the first 5 scenes he was in. It took me a while to realize it was Horn. It's just a very weird design. But definitely, in the early parts of the...
There he is, right there in the background. No, sorry.
Yeah, so in the early parts of the film, Taylor plays Volton as, being very confident and in control as he works to get rid of all these pesky racers. And he gives the Colonel a bit of an edge that paints the guy as somebody you definitely wouldn't want to cross, which made me think that he was going to be like a really big antagonist. And while he is kind of sort of an antagonist, like the rest of these space Nazis, things kind of go out of control for him very quickly. And between one of his subordinates running AWOL and, a deadly bioweapon getting ready to destroy the populace, this guy just really can't catch a break. And even as things spiral down for him, you can still feel Taylor just trying to maintain a sense of calm and his performance. But in the end, it's just too much, so he ends up fusing with a giant tentacle monster to take on a bioweapon. Because again, what even is this movie?
God, I forgot that!
Surprisingly though, even when he becomes part kaiju, Taylor just somehow never manages to delve into total ham, which kind of...
There is so much that happens in this movie!
Yes, there is. It kind of surprised me that he didn't go total ham once he turned into a kaiju, but he so sounded like he was having a lot of fun with this, and I was definitely very entertained. My only complaint, though, actually has nothing to do with him and more to complain with Volton's actual fate in the movie because, well, we never really see him again after he becomes part kaiju. Like, you see him in the middle of fighting Funky Boy and then he's just kind of gone, and the climax is just something else entirely. Like, I mean, again, this isn't like a big complaint because, again, this isn't really the kind of movie you come to for the plot. And the final sequence is so cool that's kind of really hard to care about those sort of details, but it does just feel like a case of, like, maybe this movie was trying to juggle too many things at once. And so, I guess with that, we're good to move into, like, the actual focus of the film, which is our four main characters. For the first half of our heroes, well, if you could call them that, we have Old Man Mole, who serves as JP's chief mechanic, and Frisbee, another skilled mechanic who is a childhood friend of JP's and has connections to the Mafia. Playing Old Man Mole, we have Steve Kramer, and playing Frisbee, we have one Liam O'Brien.
Which I'm kind of surprised they use their real names, but, you know.
And no, I'm not surprised by Steve Kramer, because Steve Kramer's in everything. Liam O'Brien is a little surprising, but I guess this was technically before he primarily moved on to Western animation, so...
Yeah, might have been right before he unionized.
Yeah.
So...
Yeah, so Steve Kramer has played such characters as Metal Mogabet from Magi, The Kingdom of Magic, Wiseman from the Viz Media redub of Sailor Moon R, and Etherno Kage from Naruto. Liam O'Brien has played such characters as Dr. Kenzo Tenma from Monster, Yuri Petrov, aka Lunatic from Tiger Money, and Loy Asplund from the Code Geass franchise. Boy, I know I did not spell that last name correctly. So, do you have any notes on these two?
Well, okay. This is where I get into my point that I was making earlier, is the fact that here we have an old alien man with, like, 4 arms and 4 legs, and we have Frisbee, who's basically an alien troll, who is also kind of a troll. Basically, we have 2 performances here that are very grounded, that feel like 2 real people having real conversations in spite of the fact that they are playing 2 types of people who don't actually exist. And I think that, excuse me, I think that is a statement to the performances of Liam O'Brien and Steve Kramer. I think we've got 2 very talented actors here who know their craft very well and are able to construct performances that feel real, that feel like characters. Even though there's not a lot of character development, if at all, in this film, they still feel like people. They still feel like characters, and I think a lot of that has to do with the performances of Steve Kramer and Liam O'Brien. They play off of each other extremely well in this film. You've got Mole, who's kind of an old, jaded man who has learned his craft for a long time, and he doesn't like to take too many chances. And then you've got Frisbee, who's, he's a younger guy. You know, he's not necessarily a bad guy, but he's willing to take more chances, and he's willing to do some not too great things to kind of get where he needs to go. But he cares about JP as a friend enough that he's not going to do anything too sinister. And I think that's one of the strengths of this film, and specifically this dub, is the fact that in spite of Frisbee and Old Man Mole being absolutely ridiculous, they feel real. So, yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it is sort of interesting you said, like, Frisbee didn't, ultimately do too much to harm JP. Like, he blew up his car at the beginning of the movie. Like, that could have killed him.
I mean, yeah, but we don't really know the rules of life and death in this series, honestly.
Okay, I mean, I guess that is fair, but still.
I mean, he did live, so maybe people just live in explosions in this universe. So...
yeah, I guess that is just one of those things you don't think about too much, but...
Yeah. And Lord knows, they were probably making this movie scene by scene, honestly.
Yeah,
So-
definitely.
I mean, this was probably like a Gurren Lagann kind of production where they just were like, fuck it, just do this, it'll be fine. You know?
Yeah. So, for me, Steve Grammer is another name I'm kind of surprised we haven't talked about too much on this show, because he's pretty much the default guy Callie does for playing cracky old men, and this role is definitely him very much in his element. Steve plays Mole as a kind of guy who's, clearly too old to be putting up with any of this. And he gives him a very kind of no-nonsense tone that makes him feel like he's, the only adult in the room whenever he's dealing with JP or Frisbee. Especially Frisbee, since he kind of makes it very clear that he doesn't trust him that much. And Steve makes his general disdain for the guy pretty clear in his tone. But at the same time, we've already established, this isn't that serious of a movie, so... Steve can still get a little wacky with the character from time to time, like that one bit where he mentioned that even at his age, he's still a little bit of a horn dog, that's a line, I guess. Or his delivery when he straight up blows a monster's head off with a shotgun, which was also a scene that happened. Speaking of that bit...
Sorry.
Speaking of that bit, while Mole, very clearly doesn't like Frisbee for the majority of the film, I thought it was pretty cool that when the chips were down, he still came to bail him out, and I thought that was kind of touching in its own weird way. I mean, like, kind of weird that he's trying to murder the guy, but again, don't think about that too hard. Between the two, though, I have to say the bigger standout for me was probably Liam O'Brien as Frisbee, because, like with David Laws, he's not an ABC and anime a lot these days, so it's always kind of nice to kick back, and, for a minute, it's about the times where he was basically in everything, including this. So a lot of Liam O'Brien's anime roles tend to be snobby villains, psychos, or tragic anime boys who travel down an ever-increasing spiral of despair, and looking at you, Karia, and Temba. So hearing him play a character, more akin to a monster was kind of an interesting change of pace. And I kind of liked how he added a little bit of edge to his voice to make this guy seem like he was, really doing his best to sound like a quote-unquote hardened criminal, but he didn't lean too much into the stereotype, by giving him a New York accent or something. Like, that probably would have been a little bit too silly. So, in the beginning of the film, Frisbee kind of comes off as being, very much all business and very aloof, which is kind of reflected in Liam's performance. Since he played the guy as kind of being, the sort of person who's convinced he's hot stuff and, clearly too classy for the likes of JP and Mole. But as we learn over the course of the film, while he kind of acts a little bit dismissive of JP in the beginning, he very clearly cares about him. And we eventually learn this is because he feels a little bit guilty over the fact that JP only has a criminal record because of trying to help him out when he got involved with the mob, which kind of makes you wonder why this guy is so involved with the mob, but again, don't think about that too hard. So while we don't get to see too much of that guilt expressed directly in Lee's performance, you do hear a bit of it when he decides to go against the wishes of his boss because, he wants to see JP win for a change. And it made me feel for that a little bit in the end. So, yeah, I wouldn't say this was exactly a very typical role for Liam O'Brien, but he did a very solid job at it, and I very much enjoyed both these characters. They were a lot of fun. And with that, I guess we're good to move on to our leads. Our two leads would be one, Joshua Punkhead, better known as Sweet JP, and Satoshi McLaurin. JP is a hot-blooded racer who lives for the thrill of a race and only gets into red line because two of the other racers bow out at the last second because, again, who really wants to, get into the crosshairs of space Nazis? While Satoshi is a popular racer who initially beats JP at the race for Yellow Line and qualifies for Red Line where the two of them end up crossing paths again. So playing Satoshi, we have one Michelle Ruff, who has played such characters as Rukia from Bleach, Yatsatoru from Erased, Monica Mukado from Alone in the Sea, and Fujiko Mine in basically every non-Funimation licensed incarnation of Lupin the Third, as well as the woman called Fujiko Mine.
Yeah, I was gonna say, except for the last one that was licensed by Funimation.
Yeah. And Patrick Seitz, you'll know for such characters as Jiren from Dragon Ball Super, Pideon from Gargantia on the Virtuous Planet, Frankie from One Piece, and good old Neo Brando from JoJo's Bizarre Adventure. So, what were your thoughts on these two?
It's Dio and Fujiko. How can you complain? No, but in all seriousness, I loved both their performances, and these are my second examples of how human the characters could feel in spite of the larger-than-life world that they were in. And I like... First of all, Patrick Seitz doesn't get to play, like, normal guys a lot, so it was kind of nice to see him be able to play a very down-to-earth, just normal dude, because a lot of his performances lately, as great as they are, they haven't let him just be kind of himself. So it was kind of cool to be able to hear him like this, and kind of the same with Michelle Ruff. As Sanoshi, Sanoshi is pretty normal. She's a pretty normal girl. You know, she has, normal reactions to things, and it just happens that surrounding these people is their larger than life ambitions and like what they want to do and how they go about it. I'm trying to think of where else I can go with this. It was kind of fun the scene when Sanoshi is in her own apartment and she's just kind of watching the other contestants, like them being shown off, and like her commentary over it was a pretty fun scene. And it was just nice, like the kind of quips that Michelle Ruff got to say throughout the whole thing. For JP, like for Seitz's performance as JP, I just liked his character. Like he came across as very likable and down to earth and just like, I don't know, like it's sort of hard to explain, but like one of the first scenes we really get to know him is when he's ready to give up, and that's kind of interesting because you don't see a lot of main characters, especially in anime, who the first scene that they're in is them wanting to give up, and sort of through that he sort of progresses and he kind of gets to where he wants to be, and I like that, and I like the fact that we kind of see Seitz kind of give JP that, where he sort of, Seitz's first real performance as JP was him sitting on a stretcher in a body cast, basically just depressed. And he's finally given a second chance to do what he wants, and it gives him the fire and the motivation to keep going. And it was even more interesting in the flashbacks when you see a even younger JP, who's more innocent, more vulnerable, against Sanoshi, who's actually kind of more tight, kind of more tightly wound when she was younger than she is now. And the fact that the big scene they have together when they're kids comes back at the end of the movie, and I liked that, and I liked how the actors kind of let their characters grow and let them just not feel the need to really be anything else but themselves. So that's my thoughts.
Yeah, I really like that too. For me, I'll start with Michelle Ruff. Michelle's made a pretty good name for herself playing, sultry woman since, she's the voice of Fujiko Mine. And while Satoshi obviously isn't anywhere close to that particular archetype, Michelle does bring, a little bit of sex appeal to her general tone, I thought, and I thought that kind of matches with how fan service heavy that character design was totally supposed to be. Like, I mean, like that whole scene you mentioned where she's kind of sarcastically talking about the other races. She was completely naked in that scene. So, again, that tells you the kind of movie this is.
Right. But I do like the fact that it's just kind of her just hanging out in her apartment.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, I thought that was pretty cool.
Also, every time I look at her, I just think to myself, there's got to be some Jolene Cujo inspiration there.
Probably.
Yeah.
At the same time, though, Sadashi also kind of comes off as, like, a little bit of a tomboy since he's, clearly into racing and not much else, and I like that Michelle has, like, a little bit of boyish charm to her voice that matches that personality, and does so without leaning too much into any butch stereotypes, which I can definitely appreciate. And I also really liked her delivery during the flashback to her and JP's childhood, and that whole bit where she's pulling her car out of the junk pile because she can't really afford to give up halfway through. And that pretty much more or less tells you everything you need to know about the character and how determined she is to reach the finish line. And admittedly, since she isn't like super deep, since again this isn't really that kind of film, but I liked how well Michelle got that aspect of across as well as all the other parts of her personality, and I was really able to buy her performance very easily, and I thought it was pretty enjoyable. As for Patrick Sykes and JP, like you were saying, these days he's mostly known for the gruffer characters he plays, and of course, Dio. But he's played his share of younger guys, and he knows how to lay on some charm when he needs to. Okay, so it's a good thing too, because between his killer pompadour and his crazy racing skills, JP is definitely a character who more or less bleeds cool, and have good voice that at any point didn't carry off the same level of coolness would have probably broken the illusion a little bit, so I'm definitely glad that Patrick's performance more or less delivered on the level of energy required here. And he did a good job in making JP sound, very smooth as silk at basically all times, and also, just very laid back. And I also really just like the level of confidence in his voice because he just sells the guy he just sells him as the kind of guy who just knows exactly what he wants to do and is just extremely confident in himself, and I really appreciated that. And it's also just as much fun whenever you get to go like really hammy into races. And it's a level of intensity and pure adrenaline in Patrick's voice as JP's like literally blazing towards the finish line was really fun. Especially just during that whole crazy climax. But great as Patrick was with the fun aspects of JP's characters, though, he's just as effective during like the few quiet moments he gets. Like a lot of his interactions with Sadashi whenever he goes over their paths together, and those scenes felt just as believable as JP's louder ones, and it definitely made the film a lot more, well, I guess it gave the film a little bit of nuance in, beneath all the insanity, and so that was pretty cool. And, like you were saying, I really liked a lot of JP and Odyssey scenes together. I thought the chemistry between the characters and the performances, respectively, worked pretty well. And it definitely helped to make the climax of the film work a lot better than it could have otherwise had, so I thought that worked out pretty nicely. So yeah, all in all, I think these performances were kind of a blast. For Patrick Sykes in particular, it kind of made me wonder what it would have been like if Patrick Sykes had been cast as Dandy in Space Dandy instead of Ian Sinclair. I mean, great that I love Ian Sinclair's Space Dandy, but it's just one of those things where you kind of wonder. And it didn't help that both these dudes are space travelers with pompadours, so, like, that's a thing. So this kind of makes me wonder if maybe those two are just distantly related somehow. I could totally buy that those two would be like cousins or something, or at the very least they just go out and buy a beer together. Like JP's the kind of guy who would definitely hang out at boobies.
Yeah. I was trying to see if like the creator of Space Dandy kind of worked on. I know that Shinichiro Watanabe kind of directed Space Dandy, but.
Yeah, well, there were a lot of animators on this movie, and there were a lot of animators on Space Dandy, so who knows?
Yeah.
So with that, I guess we're good to move into final thoughts.
Yeah. Pretty much everything I felt I needed to say, I've already said. I just... One thing I really like about this dub is just how real it felt, in spite... Like, there was a rawness to it that I really liked, in spite of the fact that we were watching this flashy, over the top, like, experiment and excessiveness, basically. And I really liked all the casting. I know that I've stated that a lot of the characters weren't really in the movie all that much, and that's okay, because the two main characters we had and the two tertiary characters that we had were a lot of fun. Like, they were characters that were enjoyable to, like, watch and just be a part of their story. And I think all the actors did a great job and made it, like, easy to, like, follow them and not feel like you didn't want to be a part of their story. And I think all the not so essential characters were a lot of fun to watch too. Maybe not as memorable, but they were still fun, and they still added a lot of, like, energy to the film. So, not that it really needed all that much, honestly. But yeah, that's kind of my final thoughts.
Okay, as for me, so like I said a little earlier, I never quite gotten around to finishing this movie before this podcast. And it's kind of a shame, because this is a really fun movie. It's chock full of adrenaline, great music, and some really absolutely out of this world animation highlights. Like, we haven't talked too much about this film's animation, but it's like, you will be floored. This thing looks amazing. Like, you can totally believe this thing took a decade to make, because there's just so much packed into every frame of this movie, and I really feel sorry for Madhouse, because this probably did bankrupt them. So, but I guess if you're gonna go out in a blaze of glory, this is definitely the one you would want to go out on. So, it's pretty cool, and yeah. There's definitely so much going into this film that I almost had a hard time believing it got made at all, but, while it's a little bit light in terms of actual plot, it's a lot of fun to watch, and, basically any complaints I can make about the film would be more nitpicks than, like, any actual flaws, because, again, this is just a sort of film you come to for how fun it is, and a lot of that high energy is just matched by an incredibly strong tone, packed full of a lot of crazy and occasionally grounded performances and some pretty fun writing. By now, I'm sure that basically almost everyone has seen this thing at least once, but if you haven't, I definitely recommend fixing that as soon as possible, because if you're in the mood for some perfect popcorn entertainment, I can think of a few things, animated or otherwise, that will fit your needs quite as well as this does. Like, this really is just like the perfect popcorn movie. And with that, I guess we're good. If you would like to watch Red Lion, currently to do so, you will actually have to pony up for that.
Yeah, because I saw it on Tubi, but apparently it's leaving Tubi pretty soon. So
Yeah, you can watch it on YouTube. You can rent it on YouTube for like $2 if you want to. It is on Tubi TV at the moment, but I don't know how long that's gonna last. And I'm pretty sure you can still buy it in retail, on online retailers. I don't think manga has let those Blu-rays expire yet. And I'm pretty sure you can find them for like $20 or something, or less than that. So, yeah, definitely pick this up if you get the chance. It's definitely a lot of fun. So, before we leave tonight, is there anything you want to plug real fast?
Yeah, sure. So I've gotten back to YouTube video making. I'm actually at a place where I'm kind of happy with the production that I'm doing right now. My last one was a look at Alexandre Aja's Cobra movie, which I'm particularly proud of. It's one of my most in-depth videos so far. But my next one, I actually just kind of revealed it during the previous episode we did for the oh my god, Faragon. Yeah, it was the Faragon episode. Where I am currently working on a video about the artistic influences of Hirohiko Araki. And you can basically follow me on Twitter at LackTheWatcher. You can find pretty much links to everything else I do there. And just look for my YouTube, LiamAC/LackTheWatcher, and you'll find everything you need to know about me. So, yeah.
Yeah, those sound like cool projects, so definitely check those out whenever you get around to making them.
Yeah, it's actually, the scripting is almost done, so...
Yep. Cool. As for me, you can find me on Twitter, Shitsuru Infinity at Dub Talk or at Divine Nega, where I'll usually just, be talking about anime, cartoons, or video games, or whatever. You can also find me on my blog, Aberration Infinity, where I'll occasionally write things. I'm not doing Reddit for anything this season. Next season, I'm debating because there's a few things I'm kind of interested in, but I guess we'll see how that goes. Okay, and as for us in general, we're the Dub Talk Podcast. You can find us on Twitter, Twitch, YouTube, Instagram, all the internet places. We also have a Ko-fi page where you can donate to us if you need to, so, help us out if you ever feel like doing that. And, with that, I guess we're good to go for tonight. So, thanks for hanging out with me, Lack.
Sorry?
And, until next time, Otako on, my friends, and, have a good night.
Yeah, okay. Take care, everybody.
I am incomplete.